Today we're going to talk about the escalation trap. This term was coined by Professor Robert Pape from the University of Chicago. What it essentially means is that both Iran and the US cannot afford not to escalate again, because they cannot afford the other side to have the escalation dominance. Once the MOU was signed, many of the MOU clauses were in favor of Iran. That is why the US had to violate some of the points of that MOU. The US ships were hugging the coast of Oman instead of coordinating with Iran, and that is why Iran attacked some of those ships, making sure that no one was killed on board. So this escalation will continue, and of course there is another reason of that. The JCPOA was negotiated for 20 months. These negotiations involved nuclear weapons and the stockpile. That is why it's not going to take just 60 days, it's going to take much longer. And that is why there's always going to be a threat of escalation. I have a clip for you from the former US NSA, Jake Sullivan.
60 days is a kind of ridiculously short amount of time to negotiate a nuclear program. But what they'll do is just keep extending that timeline, I believe, as long as something doesn't happen that fully disrupts it. But I think both sides have enough incentive to keep it going that you'll just see this continue 60 days, then another 60 days, then another 60 days, and that's kind of the new normal we're living in.
Since we've established that this will take more than just 60 days, it's a battle of nerves, and also a case of who blinks first. You know, the Iranians have shown a lot of strategic depth in their thinking, because whenever they come for negotiations, they have all kinds of technical experts. On the other hand, the US has some real estate giants negotiating on its behalf. However, technical experts will get involved in future. The main issue is that both sides are trying to maintain its leverage. Strait of Hormuz is Iran's leverage, and that is why it will not allow ships to pass freely without any coordination. And of course, they cannot charge fees just for 60 days. After 60 days, they will most likely come up with a mechanism to charge. So Iran is holding on to its leverage. It also has the leverage of the nuclear stockpile, which it will eventually give in, but it wants sanctions relief in return. As you know, the NATO summit is going on in Turkey and President Trump is there. He was asked by reporters about Iran, and he gave a very frustrated response. Apparently, he has been seeing the overwhelming support of Iranian people for their late supreme leader and for his funeral. And he was expecting the people to go against their government and for them to push for regime change, but just the opposite is happening. The decapitation strikes have united the Iranian people, and this is frustrating President Trump. You can figure out his state of mind by listening to this clip.
To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they'd use it.
After this statement, the president ordered attacks on Iran, to which Iran responded in Kuwait and Bahrain. Perhaps another reason for President Trump's frustration is the changing relationship between Israel and the US. Recently, Israeli cabinet members had criticized President Trump over the MOU, and Vice President J.D. Vance came to his rescue, and he said, "It is not in Israel's interest to criticize the only president of the only country in the world that is supporting Israel right now." In response to that, he said, "We have another friend, and that is India." The fact of the matter is that Israel and America have underestimated Iran, and now they're facing defeat in this war, and in their frustration, they are fighting with each other like school kids.
I respect J.D. Vance. We have a very good relationship, but doesn't mean that I agree with everything that he says. And I have to point out this. Donald Trump is the greatest friend we ever had in the White House. And I stand by that completely. Secondly, we have some other friends, like a small country called India. You know, it has 1.4 billion people. And boy, do we have a tremendous support there.
You're watching Pivot Roundup on Pivot Report. This is Sulaiman Malik.